We have a new FIDE World Chess Champion. The first three rapid games today were all ties. They were all draws. Very accurate play. This fourth and final rapid game was decisive, and let's go through it. This game determined who would be the next world champion. So we start off with a Ruy Lopez. We have Jan with the white pieces, Ding with the black pieces. You see 25 minutes each over here on the left, and they get 10 seconds added to their clock every move. So this is all kind of standard Ruy Lopez. We've seen similar lines in this match. And all of this is pretty normal until we see B takes A4. Now we get an imbalance where Ding goes up a pawn, but he has isolated A pawns. So something to keep in mind. And he's looking to play C5 and kind of create this bind in the center, controlling all the dark squares. This is an interesting move. When I saw this, I thought, why put the bishop on B1? It's a little counterintuitive, but what it does is it opens up a double attack on the A pawn, opens up the rook, and also this bishop is on a nice long diagonal, so eventually Jan could play C3 and D4, open up the bishop that way towards the black king. He starts with B3, wins that A pawn back. You might be wondering, why not A takes B? Well, the pawn was pinned to the knight. So C5 played, knight takes. Now we're back to equal material. Ding does have this isolated pawn, so I think Jan kind of came out ahead there in terms of the pawn structure. All Jan's pawns are connected, but he does still have the bad bishop on B1. So you balance those imbalances, and we're looking at a 0.18 advantage for Jan. Puts the knight back on C3. The computer does not like that move. The computer says, instead you should put the knight on B2 and come out to C4 and push the pawns to C3 and D4. So knight C3, computer doesn't like it. Half a pawn advantage now for Ding. A5 was a good move, knight D2, knight C4. And now at this point, there's two moves that the computer likes for Ding, queen D7 and queen to D8. And the game went pawn to D5. The reason I think the computer is not a fan of this is if you look at black's pawns, E5, C5, A5, now they're all becoming weaker, especially C5 and E5. So that D pawn was defending both of them. But Ding decides to play active here, and I like this choice from a practical perspective. I mean, he felt he had some chances to play for a win probably with that bishop on B1, so he's going for it. He's not going to take his chances and try to go into the blitz segment where Jan is actually probably the favorite in the blitz. So we have his trade. Bishop back to D2. We're seeing some mistakes in this game. The first three rapid games were very high level games. The players had like over 90% accuracy on chess.com, according to their analysis. But now we see another mistake. In this position, knight takes D5 as the top move, and after bishop takes, going pawn to C3. But instead he drops the bishop back. And this allows knight to F4. Knight to F4 would have been a super strong move. And the idea is you're eyeing these pawns around the white king. This would have gave an advantage for Ding Liren. Instead, he plays knight takes C3. Not as big of an advantage, but still an advantage nonetheless. Bishop takes C4 played. He takes C4. And now we have a new imbalance. Bishop pair for Jan versus bishop and knight. And weak pawns for Ding. So, both of those things favor Jan, but what favors Ding in this position is a passed pawn and this horrible bishop on B1. So these are new imbalances that they have to play with, and there's some good chances to play for a win for both sides, which ends up happening. Bishop to D8, bishop D2, and now we see C3, maybe looking to play D4 soon, open up that bishop, and Ding goes aggressive with F5, puts his rook in the center. Notice how every piece is on a good file for the major pieces, and both the bishop and the knight are active as well. So both players are trying to improve their pieces. Jan just needs to get this bishop active. Okay, so we're getting some improving moves. This is a long game, so I'm going quickly here. Now we see a break by Ding. Pawn to E4, and D takes E4 as the top move. And knight to E5, brilliant move, and Ding has found a lot of these moves during the match. He plants his knight on D3, and now we see weak pawns for Jan, but it gives Jan the chance to get rid of that terrible bishop, and Jan takes it. So now after the dust settles, we have this position where Jan is up a pawn. So there's an extra F pawn for Jan, and it's hard to tell what Ding has for compensation. The computer really likes rook to d2, and the idea is your queen could come to c6, maybe the rook gets active down here on the 7th rank. We have a +1 advantage for Jan. Jan's in the driver's seat here. But if you look at the clocks, 6 minutes and 26 seconds for Ding, 12 minutes and 20 seconds for Jan. So there's not a lot of time. That encourages players to make more mistakes. Rook to a1 played, and now the game is right back to equal after rook takes f5. So material's even. Ding does have this passed pawn, but his king is a bit more exposed. So king safety is a big deal when you have a queen endgame like this. Queen c6, attacking the bishop, eyeing queen to e8 check. And one thing to note here, when you get into queen and pawn endgames, we can all learn from this. If you have a diagonal that's opening your king up, put your queen on that diagonal. This is very important. So Ding's queen really wants to stay on this diagonal to prevent the white queen from checking. That's a great defensive place for the queen, and she's also kind of eyeing offensive things, right? She's guarding these two squares on the A file for this pawn to push. She's keeping an eye on c3 to try to win that pawn potentially. And she's also watching this diagonal, which could maybe attack the white king. So that queen on c4 is pretty much on the perfect square. So one thing that Jan wants to do from the white side is maybe I can deflect that queen off of c4 to create some problems for black. Okay, so now we get this trade offer, bishop to e5, and the commentators thought, okay, we're just going down to a quick draw here. Bishop takes c5, for example. There's this line where you can play rook c7, queen e8, and then bishop takes c3, and all of a sudden things are starting to trade off. And this is getting closer and closer to a draw. But we didn't see that in the game. Let's go back to the game position. We see queen to e8 played. This attacks the rook on f7, attacks the bishop on e5, and now there's some things to think about. Do you play bishop takes c3 as Ding, which he did play, knowing that rook c1 is coming? This pins down the bishop, and here you have to be really careful. Rook takes c3 is threatened, and then this rook hangs. You also have to watch for forks. You don't want to put that rook somewhere where the queen could fork it. So for example, rook to b7, you could take the bishop and then play queen here check, hitting the king and hitting the rook with the queen at the same time. So rook f6 played, excellent move. Queen d7, and there's only one move here. And Ding has been doing an awesome job this match, finding only moves when he's needed them. This bishop is about to get captured. It's going to be round up pretty quickly with a move like queen to d1, queen c2, and then how do you defend it? And it can't move because it's pinned to this queen. Queen to d2, queen to e2 found by Ding, and if rook takes c3, there's queen e1 check, forking the king and rook. So brilliant move and a great way to save that bishop. So now the advantage for Jan is this queen is off the valuable diagonal, right? So that's what we talked about before, but Ding is up a pawn. So now there's two passed pawns for Ding. The extra pawn for Jan is sitting over here on f2. Nice defensive pawn, but not doing anything in terms of trying to promote to a queen. So can Jan find some sort of perpetual check here, knowing that this queen is off the important diagonal? He does start with queen e4 check, and if you look at the engine, 0.0 eval, right? So this is saying draw with best play. King g8, queen check, king goes back, and if you look at the clocks, 1:46 for Ding, 3:28 for Jan. So Jan's thinking here, I have a draw all day long, but maybe I can get Ding to make some mistakes. And he repeats, and it would have been interesting to see if king g8 played, would Jan have tried to play for a win, or would he have gone for the perpetual check? I'm not really sure, but Ding says, you know what? I'm going to play for the win. I'm going to pin my own rook, which looks super dangerous, especially with only 1 minute and 23 seconds on the clock. I'm going to pin my own rook because I know that I have two passed pawns and I could become the world champion if I'm able to promote one of those pawns. So queen to f5 played, pawn to c4, and at this moment, the best move is queen to f4. This is really hard to spot. The idea with queen to f4 is you attack this pawn, you force it to c3, and then you go back. Queen to f5. This seems really counterintuitive. But the idea is you want to avoid this queen getting on the important diagonal. This is what we keep coming back to again and again and again. So remember this for your own games. If Ding gets the queen on d3, protected by the pawn, that's game over. This is like winning territory now because this queen has to move off the important diagonal, and these passed pawns are going to start to run with the black queen perfectly placed again. h4 played, and this was a blunder, and the reason why is queen d3 found by Ding. So Jan had to play queen f4, make that pawn push, and then go right back to f5. Super hard to spot. And we have 1 minute, 2 minutes on the clock. So queen f3 played. Now bishop to d2 is the strongest move, followed by c3. That's a -5 eval. But rook f6 played, given a little bit back, -3 now. Queen g4, c3, here come the pawns. Rook d1, queen goes back to g6. So now Ding is in position to keep offering queen trades because these pawns are so strong. Jan cannot accept the queen trade. Rook gets on c6, great square for the rook. The queen's perfectly placed like we talked about on this diagonal. Rook is behind one of the passed pawns. It's only 2 squares from promoting. Jan is in big trouble. Rook to d6 played. Now the eval goes to 1.9, and Jan plays the best move, trades off the rooks. Queen e4 check, and what do we see? The queen is off the important diagonal again. That dropped the eval from, what, -3 to -5 range to now -1.1. So all of a sudden, Jan is back in the game. And could Jan find some tactics here? Maybe the h-pawn comes up, helps out the queen in terms of attacking that black king. Queen g6 played. Again, he's able to offer the queen trade. He wants that queen back on the perfect diagonal. But now queen to c4. And all of a sudden, the queen is tying down the pawn from pushing to c2. Well, actually, it would require a deflection. So c2, pawn h5, and how does this queen stay on the diagonal after g4, right? These squares are both covered by the white queen. So c2 can't be played. This can't be played, a4, because the queen takes bishop on b4, right? So all of a sudden, queen c4 is tying down both of these pawns. So how does Ding make progress? Queen b1 check. And now he plays pawn to a4. He says, all right, my queen is going to guard the bishop. I'm going to push the a pawn. And I am not afraid of your counterattack. Bishop d4, queen f7 going after my g-pawn. This was double-edged by Ding. I mean, we have 1 minute on the clock each, and Ding decides I'm playing for the win. Even though he gave up a much larger advantage from a few moves ago. Bishop d4 played. Pawn to a3. The engine says equal. The move that Jan needs to find here, he did not find. It's bishop takes g7. And I was watching this live. I did not hear the commentators mention bishop takes g7 because these moves were coming out rapid fire. But I had a thought in my mind. I was like, I wonder after Jan's next move, and I saw the eval bar go back up. I was like, I wonder if bishop takes g7 was the move. And indeed it was. And the idea is after king takes, now there is a perpetual check. Queen c7 check, and there's no way to get out of this because this queen and bishop are too far off to the side. So there's a lot of different options for the black king here, but the engine's going deep and saying perpetual check 0.00. So bishop takes g7 was the top move here. It looks like h5 might also hold an equal position, followed by queen f7. But instead, queen to c7 was played. And now queen g6. Excellent move by Ding, getting the queen right back where she wants to be, guarding this pawn and staying on the important diagonal. And now both of these pawns are ready to roll. This one can go to c2, this one can go to a2. And there we go, pawn c2. Bishop to d6 by Ding. Pawn to h5, this is just preventing anything here. These positions are all winning for Ding. He just has to make sure he doesn't make a blunder. And now we see bishop to e5, guarding the queening square. Jan is out of options. The best move is king right back to g2, but the problem is, after king g2, bishop to b2, it's protecting the c1 queening square, followed by, let's say, queen to b1, picking up the white bishop if white were to take that pawn. This is over. So Jan's going desperation mode, pawn g4, h takes g, pawn h5. Ding stays cool under pressure, keeps the queen guarding the pawn on this diagonal. And now pawn to g3, hitting this pawn. And after f4, Ding goes a2. I'm about to queen. Jan takes it. Ding plays bishop takes f4. This is still guarded. Bishop trades offered. This pawn's about to queen. It's a checkmate in 8 moves with best play. And there you have it. Jan resigns. He stormed away from the board. Ding just puts his head in his hands. He's shaking his head. He looks almost disappointed, but you could tell it was just extreme relief on the part of Ding Liren. He's the new World Chess Champion. Congratulations, Ding Liren. Jan Nepomniachtchi, well-played match. A lot of fighting chess. You know, it wasn't as high of a level as the Magnus matches, but I think it's because both players took more risks as well, which made it a lot more exciting for the spectators. So congrats, Ding. Awesome match, and I hope you guys enjoyed the match as well. Thanks for watching.